Schattenlaub.
Shadowrun on the Sega Genesis is, without hyperbole, one of, if not the greatest cyberpunk games ever made. Its open design, excellent world building, and varied gameplay systems elevate it past the label of RPG. It is a superb translation of its pen and paper source material, emulating the expansive lore and gameplay of its tabletop roots on the small screen. Often overshadowed by the other 16-bit Shadowrun game, it's about time Shadowrun on the Genesis got some goddamn recognition. The game opens in Seattle, 2058, with a crew of Shadowrunners being cut down by unknown forces. One of these runners, Michael, is brother to the character you will be assuming the role of, Joshua. Out for answers and justice, Joshua comes to Seattle to begin his search. The story is scarce, with bits of the narrative trickled out in conversation more than in full-screen cinematics. While one could blame this on hardware or space limitations, this reserved, silent storytelling actually ends up working in the game's favor. Shadowrun reads like a pen and paper RPG in the best way possible, with branching dialogue trees dictating what information you hear at what time. The world is admittedly more intimate in size compared to other RPGs of the time, but the amount of story packed into Seattle and the surrounding settlements is simply astounding. This is a game that needs to be read as an RPG, with the player assuming the role of Joshua as though they are a player before a game master. It doesn't have a grand screenplay like Phantasy Star 4 or Shining Force with the story moving in a clear direction. Rather, Shadowrun invites players into the life of a runner in future Seattle, being a dynamic series of events instead of a linear path. Walking down the street, you'll be privy to random events like ambushes, escaped convicts, and fences selling grenades. You'll be working for Mr. Johnson's, doing dirty work, showering off the grime in rundown motels until you're a high enough level and rich enough to start taking gigs in the next social tier. You'll meet other runners for hire, and your outfit of cleaners can become a mob in its own right, moving on up in the underworld until you have the answers you desire, or just a lot of cash and blood on your hands. Shadowrun is a text-heavy game, but thanks to the excellent writing and dozens of unique screens and character portraits, it never feels like sifting through blocks of text. The world is full of character, and learning all of the different slang, gangs, and players really pulls you in, and is a testament to the game's storied lore and world building. If you want to follow the main narrative, it's there. If not, there's always something to do. Seattle is alive, and the game always has something to offer. Joshua can assume the class of Samurai, Decker, or Gator Shaman upon first starting, though as your frag count increases and your running card fills up, you'll be able to distribute stats as you see fit by visiting a motel and resting. Money allows you to buy new gear, new friends, and even cyber implants, should you wish. Cash is easy to come by, but also easy to part with, and there's never enough to go around. Shadowrun makes you work for money, and the grind is long. Luckily, it never feels like a grind thanks to the varied missions. Escorts, package deliveries, hacking and stealing, rescue operations, full-out assaults on court buildings. There's a lot of ground to cover here. Furthermore, you may not be equipped or skilled in every type of job, meaning you'll have to look for help. Runners can be hired for single jobs or brought on as full-time employees. They too level up, and building a squad fit for different jobs is a lot of fun. What's better, you don't have to take every job thrown your way. You can refuse an offer, coming back to see what they have later on. The Matrix, for example, is a whole different game, requiring you have a data jack and invest in some serious software if you want to get anywhere. But it's pretty much optional, and if you really want to give it a go but don't have the smarts or tech, you can hire out. Likewise, you can try and schmooze your way through a court building, but if you get caught, it might be nice to have some armed backup. This hits that pen and paper feel home, giving the player ownership of what kind of adventure they want to go on and the game adapting to provide it. It's a gameplay loop that seldom gets old and makes the game fun to boot up and play whether you simply want to mess around for a few minutes, delve into dark and dangerous types of jobs with high-risk rewards, or make actual progress towards your goal. You can swap between characters in-game and in the menu by pressing C should you want to give Joshua a rest and play another avatar. The menu screen is easy to navigate, with your inventory listed on the left allowing you to use, swap, or equip items. The top houses a stat sheet for your character, and the bottom controls the PDA. Here you can save or load your game, look at your current run, or review other information you have collected regarding Michael's murder. You can also change the stance or movement speed of a character, as can you adjust the Cybermage's magic settings. It's a lot to digest at first, but soon becomes easy to read. Shadowrun does have a steep learning curve, though the freedom you have is ultimately what makes the game so immersive. Trying to find your way around the Redmond Barrens at the start is tough. The game gives you no direction other than to drop into Stoker's coffin to pick up Michael's stuff, meaning you'll need to find the jump house on your own and start doing runs to make cash. Though the option to take a taxi out of the Redmonds is available from the get-go, you'll spend a lot of time doing local runs in the area before being strong or reputable enough to meet with bigger players. Stepping into the Penumbra District or Council Island for the first time is all the more awe-inspiring and intimidating because of this demand. Seeing how cyberpunk and fantasy tech has blended with West Coast indigenous traditions, or how much cleaner the Arcology Mall is compared to the junk heap streets of the Puyallup Barrens, lends the world a deep sense of history, and once you graduate from small-time work to longer, more dangerous runs, you feel as though you've really earned it. Movement and combat too can feel stiff at first. Once you adjust your stance to something that fits your style, and you learn to swap targets with B during a gun or fist fight, things become easier. Though the game does give you an auto target and slows down your movement to let you know villains are approaching, your effectiveness in combat is dependent on both your footwork and stats. Weaponry, ranged, melee, or magic, all operate and feel slightly different from one another and take practice and grinding to master. Luckily, you can save any time while outside and have 2 save slots, so botching a run and ending up in the ER isn't the end of the world. Shadowrun is scored by a number of upbeat techno tracks, each perfectly capturing the essence of the area. The bars play dance songs, making you feel like you've just walked into a dingy or upscale establishment. Likewise, the soft tribal percussions on Council Island give a great mystical vibe while still maintaining that electronic chiptune sound. It's an all-around stellar soundtrack, worth listening to outside the game itself, though it is a shame the tracks stop and start each time you go through a door, meaning you won't get to hear most of the tunes in their entirety until you find yourself in the menu, organizing your inventory at some point. The game is played from a top-down perspective. The blocky look of the structures are readable, and it's easy to see where you can and cannot go. The variety of environments is impressive too, with the lush green nature of Council Island contrasted against the dark rundown concrete of the Barrens. Parallax layers of pipes and overhead infrastructure further the perspective's depth, as do preset shadows. Flashing neon lights, escalators, and rolling water give the areas a sense of life. Shops are marked with universal symbols, though without an in-game map, it can be hard to find certain locations due to the reduced draw distance in favor of bigger sprites. I wish there had been more crowds or NPCs on the map instead of just enemy spawns, but the game is still highly immersive without them. Shadowrun is the ultimate cyberpunk RPG. If the points explored in this video sound like modern fare, that just goes to show how well this game has aged, and how criminally underappreciated it was in setting an example of how to create an open-ended RPG. Its neon color palette scored by a dark techno soundtrack go a long way in immersing players in this fascinating fantasy cyberpunk world. It takes some time to get going, but once you've found a groove, I hazard to say you'll be a runner for life.